This week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry with agriculture broadcasters Orion Samuelson and Max Armstrong, and featuring agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier. This week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH and your local Case IH dealer. Coming up on this weekend's broadcast, the week of a big data download from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, also the week of the annual meeting of the largest farm group in the country. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this weekend's broadcast. Mr. Pearson and I have both been busy out there.
Indeed, Max. I know you were in Atlanta for the American Farm Bureau Federation. How was the crowd?
You know, it wasn't bad. It was down. Clearly, it was a little bit smaller crowd than you would usually see, but they were certainly enthusiastic about the issues that need to be handled.
And what were the issues?
Well, one of those that the president of the Farm Bureau singled out was this labor issue that farmers are dealing with. It preceded the pandemic, having enough help on farms to get the job done. Zippy Duvall talked with us about that.
We need to focus on agriculture, food production, and national security. And what does that mean within the workforce of American agriculture? And if we could ever get them to wake up and realize that, yeah, we need immigration reform. Of course we do. And yes, we need a solution to the border crisis. But the two aren't connected. The two are totally different. And the issue around ag labor is critical. I'm telling you, it's critical. It's forcing farms to be larger. Not that that's a bad thing, but that's not what the American people want to have. They want that family farm.
And the Farm Bureau president made it very clear that his members are devoting attention to the climate. Zippy Duvall says when it comes to climate and sustainability, we're leading the pack among all nations.
Our emissions and our footprint is a lot smaller than agriculture in other countries of the world. But that doesn't mean we want to stop there. We want to continue to move forward. We're looking forward to research and development, the new tools that's going to come out for us, and we want to make sure this administration is posed to make sure that they use sound science and deliver those tools to our farmers so that we can continue to expand our sustainability movement in protecting our climate.
While a number of the issues discussed by the Farm Bureau members are regional issues, when you take a look at this one, it's nationwide. Inputs. I asked Zippy Duvall about the price and availability of crop inputs.
Yeah, well, there's two issues. They're concerned about the prices, and they're even more concerned about the availability of it. And we got some suppliers saying that they're gonna try their best to deliver to their everyday customers that do business with them every day, but it's going to prevent new customers and new farmers and new people getting involved in agriculture from even having a supply to go to. But we're very, very concerned, and whatever the interruption is, whether it be at our ports, whether it be in tariffs, whatever that might be, we got to find a solution to it, because the weather's not going to wait on us. Corn's got to be planted at the right time, and it's got to be side dressed at the right time. And when you get to my house and Valentine's Day comes, I got to be able to order my nitrogen and grow the grass in front of the cows.
We also spent a little bit of time with some of the State Farm Bureau presidents at their meeting in Atlanta, Georgia. Among them, Rich Giebert, who farms in southwestern Illinois. He said he's concerned about those crop protection products that farmers will need for the growing season ahead.
What is the cost? And then what are we going to be able to get? I've been told by my supplier, only look forward to 60, 70, and if the stars all align, maybe 75% of what we bought last year.
And there may be members in your state that have even a worse situation, perhaps.
Absolutely, and we've been visiting with Mosaic and CF Industries on the fertilizer costs and what that impact. It's just what you might call the perfect storm worldwide. We're in a worldwide market, and how that impacts us farmers here in Illinois. And then you look at the crop protections. We've had conversations with Growmark on the availability and the shortage of truck drivers, product coming in from overseas. You see the backup in the ports of containers and ships. It's a real challenge. And I think we as farmers have learned to be patient. We deal with risk and we deal with challenges, and this is just two big challenges that we're faced this upcoming spring.
We might see some farmers getting that mechanical cultivation back in action once more, getting that cultivator out of the back of the shed there. We talked with one Farm Bureau president about the difference that farmers can make in their lobbying efforts when they really apply themselves, when they take the story to lawmakers in Washington. Bill Patterson is president of the Ohio Farm Bureau. He says, yes, they can make a difference.
We had a fly-in. We think we were the last state that was at D.C. before things were shut down. Then we think we were the first state back to D.C. 120 members from Ohio Farm Bureau descended on Ohio Farm Bureau and gave their message. And while the biggest thing that we hit then, because it was in October, we were talking about taxes, and we were talking about stepped-up basis and protecting the exemptions from the estate tax. And it was timely. It was at the right time. We had the right people sending the right message. So it was great to be able to provide that messaging. And coming along there, we're dealing with the water issues in Ohio. And while we're talking about water quality issues more so than WOTUS today, just the entire water issue is so big in what we're doing and talking to our legislators.
Bill Patterson, president of the Ohio Farm Bureau, farms in extreme northeast Ohio. A little bit later on, we'll share some comments from a couple of Farm Bureau women about their involvement in lobbying lawmakers.
This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by AgriGold, your seed ally in the field, with unparalleled options that perform on your farm. Learn more at agrigold.com. And it's time to take a look at the markets. We had the largest data dump from the USDA this week with quarterly grain stocks, world agriculture supply and demand estimates, all sorts of numbers coming out of Washington, D.C. To help us make sense of them, Dale Durkels of Grain Cycles joins us this week. And Dale, we didn't see a whole lot of movement in the markets post-report. Were there any surprises on the corn side that shocked you?
There wasn't anything what I'm going to call really huge that came out of the USDA numbers yesterday. When you look at corn or beans or even wheat, we got those plethora of final crop production estimates. Then we also get the quarterly grain stocks numbers, which are really hugely important in gauging, what kind of demand. Also, they're a good back check for corn and beans on the accuracy of those production numbers we had from USDA. And then you get the ending stocks estimates out of WASDE as well as the world crop numbers. But on corn across the board, including South America, I didn't see any real shocks at all.
Interesting. Over on the soybean side, anything surprise you? Nothing really seemed to surprise the trade when the report was dropped.
No, not really. But the one thing I noted in looking at the beans, and I'm still kind of puzzled and a little questioning about it, the quarterly stocks number we had for beans seemed to be a little bit high relative to what we actually have for the production estimate from the USDA. What? That kind of ties back into another question mark I have when I look at the acreage numbers, because we got the FSA acreage dump yesterday. And I really question, whether NASA's soybean acreage number planted and harvested is quite high enough at this point in time relative to the FSA. But that's an argument we'll have going forward maybe. So the only surprise in beans was, that stocks number being a little bit higher than people expected it to be. But mostly everybody right now, when you look at the bean situation, are looking at what's going on in South America and what can we think there. And those numbers really weren't a surprise to people either.
As you look down at South America, Dale, do you think there's additional room to the upside here in soybeans?
I think so, but we're kind of at a point, and I saw a comment out of Rio Grande do Sul this morning that suggested, when you start looking at USDA or CONAB release their production estimates out of Brazil on Tuesday, there's a possibility, those production estimates are on target if in fact we get rains that some people want to put in the forecast. So we're really hinging right now and what's the weather going to be going forward when we look at southern Brazil and on down into Argentina? And, are the production estimates we saw this week really realistic?
That makes sense. Chinese purchases of soybeans, Dale, do you see them coming back to the U.S. in the short term as this uncertainty in Brazil persists?
It'll probably help a little bit. USDA didn't change the export estimate on WASDE yesterday at all. And that number to me is a little bit high if in fact we continue to follow the pattern or track that we seem to be having as far as export shipments out of the U.S. But if in fact, we get some more fade in the South American crop, and maybe even including somewhat what we've seen already, we could get a kick in the back end of or the tail end of our marketing year on export shipments. So that may be why the USDA left the number where they did.
Interesting. We'll have more with Dale Dirkholz when we return. Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. We're talking markets with Dale Dirkholz of Grain Cycles. And Dale, I wanted to ask you about the quarterly grain stocks number for corn. We saw the ethanol demand get very strong third and fourth quarter 2021. Was that reflected in the quarterly grain stocks?
Yeah, it really was. The puzzle in grain stocks, and really the big piece of that puzzle we don't know about is what is feed and residual. That's always the big unknown there, because we don't document that anywhere, so we always figure that out as a residual. But when you plug the production data in, the first quarter usage that's quote unquote known usage, and you look at that stocks number, the implied feed and residual number is about on target, and that really kind of suggests, the ethanol grind number they've plugged in the first quarter is pretty well on target at this point too. So it all kind of justifies, what they did yesterday in raising the forecast for ethanol grind for the whole marketing year, because we've been grinding at a pretty good clip. The one thing we've got to be a little bit careful is that, we're starting to see some slippage, in terms of some of the profitability of grinding corn. But I think that's going to stay with us pretty aggressively unless we see crude oil take another hard dip again, and we're up here playing in the low 80s, so we're going to have to keep an eye on that. But, the ethanol number really fits pretty well, as do the feed and residual numbers they're working with too.
Well, Dale, I want to take our focus off the grain specifically for a moment and ask about inflation. CPI number was released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics this week, 7%, highest in 39 years. Dale, where do you see inflation going over this next year?
Well, at this point, we certainly don't see it going away, but we got to remember the one thing that people need to be thinking about is those numbers are really looked at year on year. So we're going to start cycling into months and quarters here when we see this data that's going to reflect, some of the higher prices we started to see once we got into the middle and eventually the latter part of 2021 itself. So, the inflation number itself, when you look at that month-on-month number, although it tends to be seasonally adjusted, could start to moderate a little bit. I don't know that we're going to see it go a lot higher, but the real key is, what does that do to Fed policy? And I know they came out yesterday, some of them talking about 4 rate hikes in a year. And the thing I keep an eye on at this point, the dollar got hit reasonably hard yesterday, although the dollar was begging for some kind of a correction, it seemed like, after having a run from last summer. I'd keep an eye on what they do with the overnight Fed funds rate. If they start tweaking that higher, it's a sign that, these rate hikes are going to be coming at us pretty quickly, although I know they've talked about the first one in March.
Dale, do you think these rate hikes could lead to some concern? Interest costs have been so low for the past several years for growers.
Well, that's a hard thing to kind of put in, because we're talking about interest rates that people are looking at that are dirt cheap anyway. And I think people got to get used to that. You're talking to somebody here, I remember home mortgage rates back in the early 80s. Let's talk about interest rates, folks, when we start getting up there and some of those adjustables that were, starting to get up in the high teens and something like that. We don't have anything near high interest rates on tap.
That's good news. Dale Dirkholz of Grain Cycles, thanks for joining us.
Good talking to you.
Chad Colby's look at agriculture technology comes your way next, brought to you by the IBM Watson Decision Platform, combining AI with Internet of Things data to help agribusiness increase yields, improve quality, and drive sustainability.
Well, our tech correspondent, Chad Colby, is back from Las Vegas. He was out there a week or so ago for the Consumer Electronics Show, provided those updates here on This Week in Agribusiness. This week, he's back around home, taking a look at some of the new technology that could help farmers be a little more comfortable.
I've got an interesting technology segment this week. Do you have sensitive eyes at all? I sure do. And over the years, I've kind of combated that with window tint on my vehicles. You can see that bright light right there. I don't have any window tint right here in this video segment. That bright light has always bothered me. And for the last, I would tell you, probably at least 30 years, my goodness, I've put window tint on my vehicles to help with that. Now, the technology has changed quite a bit. The fellow that I use has been in business over 30 years in Peoria. And on my last vehicle a couple years ago, he introduced me to some new technology that really does an amazing job at blocking out those UVs. The other thing he showed me this past week was some new technology he got to help that installation process. Not only does it go a lot faster, but it's a lot better. And he uses a computer and plotter, and the computer downloads the actual size of the glass that he's going to tint, and it will cut out the exact size of window tint material. And it makes the process so much faster because you're not sitting there with a razor blade and cutting out the window tint, quite honestly, like we used to do. I think a lot of us have done window tinting. You can buy the tint at your local auto parts store. But this is a little more advanced than that. As you might suspect, window tint is purchased in various shades. You can get it as dark as limo tint where you can't see in it at all. That's never been my intent. My intent is just make the vehicle a little more comfortable. Now, the new ceramic coatings have done that in an amazing way. You could feel the heat difference from that heat lamp right away in your hand. I grabbed a thermal gun because I wanted to show that to you, and it's almost a 30-degree difference in temperature. Can you imagine the difference of that on your tractor windows or maybe in your semi? It's a huge difference. Now, once I got my vehicle done, Troy was kind enough to kind of walk through some of the maintenance, and it's all pretty basic. It comes with a lifetime warranty if you would ever scratch it or damage it. And honestly, I've never had a problem. Now, vehicles look amazing with the windows tinted like you see here. That looks really good, but that's really never my motive behind doing this. It's I want it more comfortable. You can see right here in the bright sun, I don't have really dark window tint, but let me tell you, that new ceramic coating works amazing, and it works phenomenal at night as well. It's just a new technology to consider. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad, for that update. Always appreciate Chad's insight on what's happening in technology. Later on in the program, Greg Solier will be with us for a weather report in the week ahead.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Well, the farm dog plays an important role on many farms and ranches. Some, they're just a placeholder. I don't think we could rely on the Armstrong Jack Russells for any responsible activity out there.
Yeah.
But there are some cherished dogs.
There are, and even dogs that aren't always the most helpful on the farm are still cherished by those operations. You know, I had a corgi when we had cattle, and he wasn't trained, he wasn't a farm dog, he was a rescue, but I tell you, it was in his blood. And if I opened the gate to take in the feed wagon, he'd stand there and he'd bark at the cows.
Seriously?
To keep them from coming out. He wasn't good at hurting anything else, and he loved to nip at calves, but I tell you, sometimes it's in their blood, Max.
That helped him earn his keep, all right.
It certainly did.
Well, the winner of the Farm Bureau Farm Dog of the Year competition was a dog named Fit from Florida. You get to meet this cherished animal.
She's literally my right-hand dog, right-hand girl. I'm pretty much never without her. If I'm out here on the farm, she is almost always with me. We're very kindred spirits. I feel like our souls are connected. We kind of read each other's minds. Fit is almost 6-year-old border collie. Fit came to us from Scotland. I bought her when she was about 14 months old. She's probably one of the best ambassadors of a border collie you'll ever find. She's just an amazing dog. Fit is our prime working dog. She does a lot of chores on the farm. Every day she has to bring the sheep out, whether they're in the barn or in different pastures. She has to move them from place to place. She helps with feeding chores. But what makes her so special is this uncanny natural ability she has to read situations. She knows more about livestock than I'll ever hope to know, so I trust her decisions over mine any day. Good girl, Fit. There you go, back up.
Here.
Take her, get your sheep.
Get your sheep.
Get your
Go get 'em.
Good, Fit, lie down. There you go.
Come on, take her here.
He's doing good, Diane.
Wait,
We use her in training to help teach the young dogs how to herd. Good job. We let them go follow Fit and mimic her behaviors and hope that by mimicking, they'll learn how to be better herders. Fit keeps them from running down the pasture, so she'll put them back together for the young dogs. She tries to keep things organized. That's her job.
I'll never get him to where she is, but I'd like him to get to where he's more helpful and can do half of what she does, because she's amazing. She's just amazing. A well-trained dog is a necessity if you're going to have any number of livestock. Fit's really going to help him learn these things that he needs to learn and help me. It's become something that's really necessary as a one-person operation. She's just been great for him. I mean, she's one in a million.
A really good working dog can make or break a farm situation. She'll work with any breed of dog. She's good with every person, child, adult. And besides that, she's a wonderful pet. I literally feel like her and I are like just a bonded spirit together. Our whole lives are so intertwined. It's really an amazing feeling to have a dog like her. I think it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing.
Fit, the border collie from Florida, earned $5,000 for the owners there in that competition of the American Farm Bureau Federation Farm Dog of the Year. They pick regional winners too in that contest. I remember one favorite dog we had on the farm, Junior, who would wander into town. Dad one day had to tie him up to the water tower leg there in the shade before he could take him back out to the farm. But he would wander into town from time to time. He was the one who would sleep on the back of the bull. I told you about it.
You did.
He would look down at the pasture, and there he was, stretched out on the back of the big bull there. They were both fine with it, apparently.
That's impressive.
So you see, not everything was all policy matters and serious business at the Farm Bureau meeting.
But there was a lot of that. And Max, when you were talking to growers, what else were you hearing from folks at Farm Bureau?
One thing that has surfaced as a real issue that they want to address on the rural roots of America is mental wellness. And there was a panel about that. In fact, we'll share a visit next weekend here on This Week in Agribusiness about that. But clearly they want to make farmers and ranchers aware so that they watch for the warning signs of somebody that they know on their area, on the route down the road there, that they can perhaps intervene in some way, become a real friend and join them at that time when they really need some help. So it is a serious topic the Farm Bureau is taking seriously, and in many of the states across the country, there are programs to address the mental health concerns.
Yeah, it's certainly gotten a lot more attention over the past several years, and that makes sense with COVID in the background. Max, I wanted to ask you about young farmers. That's always been a huge part of American Farm Bureau. What did you hear at the meeting?
Well, that's why they start that meeting a little bit early, before the weekend gets underway, because many of them will have perhaps a job off the farm somewhere, but there's a great turnout, and there is competition among the young farmer and ranchers as well, and it's just neat because some of the folks that we've known through the years are honored there in the Farm Bureau ranks, and it's fun to be there and see those youthful operators recognized as well. That's one of the best things I think that Farm Bureau does, is bringing up that next generation of agriculture.
Encourages them to get active in policy, which is important.
We'll offer a little encouragement to our weatherman here momentarily. Greg Solier will be along with his agriculture weather forecast. How much winter lies ahead? I'm a little concerned about that. We'll ask that question. This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Thanks for joining us on This Week in Agribusiness. Max, you were down in Atlanta for the Farm Bureau meeting. Did you have a chance to get to meet any policymakers? I know they're always pretty thick down there at Farm Bureau meetings.
Yeah, Kansas Senator Roger Marshall was there, as a matter of fact, before he was quizzing Dr. Fauci this week. I was visiting with the senator about the farm bill writing that lies just ahead. He said he is already listening to farmers and ranchers with their input.
Senator Roberts, my mentor, it's hard to believe he won't be necessarily have his fingerprints on this farm bill. but he was part of 40 years of farm bills. He actually helped write 8 of them. And his mantra was, the first thing you do, Roger, is you go out and sit on the tongue of the wagon of the farmer and listen. And that's what we're doing. I just talked to some sugar beet growers in Minnesota, talking to folks, the peanut growers in Georgia. How's the farm bill working, right? How's ARC and PLC working? And I remember at this stage of the game with the last farm bill, sitting down with Senator Roberts having this same discussion, and he said things like, well, what the farmers are telling me is the ARC and PLC programs are good, but we'd like to be able to change it year to year. So we made some tweaks in the last farm bill. We'll see what tweaks we need to make now. Probably one of my bigger concerns right now is the administration is rolling out large amounts of money for conservation solutions that we're typically in favor of. But if they take money that was meant for wheat producers in Kansas and sticking them with conservation projects, will we get that conservation vote for the next farm bill?
It has long been a source of pride for members of the Senate Ag Committee. You mentioned, Senator Roberts, that there's been a great spirit of bipartisanship, that there's been that cooperation. Things have been able to happen. Are you worried about it, Senator?
No, we are in great shape. Deb Stabenow, the chairperson right now for the Ag Committee, Democrat from Michigan, great relationship with her. We were singing Christmas carols together just a couple weeks ago, and she was playing the piano with other senators. You know, Cory Booker is a liberal Democrat from New Jersey, but he and I are having great conversations about maybe the nutrition component of a farm bill. I think you'll see huge bipartisan support. You know, we're going to have some iron sharpening iron discussions, but at the end of the day, we'll hope to reproduce what Senator Roberts was able to do just, goodness, 3 years ago.
Senator Marshall embracing that process of bringing in input from the growers, to be sure, and drawing on some of the experiences of his predecessor in Washington, Senator Pat Roberts. Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Well, it's time to look at the weather. Greg Solier is in the studio. And Greg, what do you see on the West Coast, the Pacific Northwest? What are they getting this week?
Well, the big moisture pattern has played out during the month of December. Gone here so far in these days of January. But the damage is done with probably too much of a good thing, with western Washington and Oregon streams and rivers at or better than bankful. Yeah, some wintertime flooding in that part of the Pacific Northwest. But still, you go east of the Cascades in the Sierra Ranges and points on southward. What was a great December has been an uneventful January, with the exception of the cold through Big Sky country of the northern plains and Canadian prairie. Some signs of that retooling and slipping a little farther east and south, and maybe with time taking aim at the Midwest. So overall, early in the week, a quiet weather picture in the Pacific Northwest. The front will approach coastal sections. Moisture there. Intermountain West all quiet. A windy weather system. A slight uptick in temperature readings across sections of the Dakotas. That's where the snow cover plays out, by the way, across North Dakota. Not much to speak of central and southern Plain States areas, where back into Southern California, maybe the Imperial Valley sees a couple of sprinkles of rain. Again, so far through January, disappointing moisture across the Sierra Ranges of the valleys of California. Quiet high pressure across the Four Corners area, and a nice recovery on temperatures, at least back to more seasonal levels. Nebraska, Kansas, a bit of a drop into the southern plains, where the drought pattern is back into play, or at least ongoing, after some modest improvement and little, if any, organized moisture late in the week, save for a stray shower Napa on northward. Maybe a little shower activity across parts of West Texas. Cotton, seasonal cold across the plains. The drought pattern continues on, and it's back to reality temperature-wise there later in the week.
Well, across the central part of the U.S., some folks are dealing with snow this weekend. Greg, what's coming in the week ahead?
Yeah, boy, I tell you, the big snow that came through parts of the northern and eastern plains, western Corn Belt locales, those systems have been dropping into the delta and swinging back into the north and northeast. And this is the western and northern flank of some of that storminess across parts of the Midwest. Have yet to still see any organized snows. 5 to 10 inch deficits on the snow total so far through parts of the eastern and central Corn Belt locales. Here's another shot of bitter cold retooling through the northern plains, upper Midwest, and we think that cold with time is going to begin to settle on southward with another cold frontal trowel and some snow showers and flurries mid to late portions of the week across the northern and western Corn Belt locales. It is farther south with at least no shortage of weather systems, 3 of them coming out here over the past 3 to to 5 days out of Texas into the Delta to the north and northeast. And yeah, we have some wet snowflakes as far south as the Metroplex, parts of the lower Mississippi Valley early in the week with quiet weather in the desert southwest, and another low coming out of the western Gulf that will again track to the north and northeast. And yeah, snow again over where we've seen already some snowfall as far south as lower Mississippi Valley, Tennessee Valley, and into the Ohio Valley. Or at least Mike, back in December, we had the tornadic activity, now snowstorms in the deep south.
Yeah, what do you see as you look farther east, Greg?
Across the Corn Belt locales, the northeast of New England, the cold up towards the Sioux. Here's at least the western flank of that powerhouse storm that came out of the southern states, sweeping its way quickly early in the week. Organized snow and cold, where snow has been pretty much deficit-wise over sections of the eastern Corn Belt with a cold front on the move. And again, the cold air establishing itself here for a change to the upper Midwest. Lake snows downwind and a little bit of moisture to the northeast of New England, where it has been a very active weather pattern there over the past couple of weeks. Here's this next low coming out of Texas, and with it along the periphery of the cold air, rain shower thunderstorm activity for the Gulf Coast, a freeze for the northeast and New England and mid-Atlantic region, moisture into the southern plains late in the week.
Greg Solier is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
We're talking weather. Greg Solier's here. Greg, on your last report, we saw a lot of potential snow and rain. Who's going to get the most of it?
We think as the week wears on, with a third storm system coming out of that deep south, lower Mississippi Valley Delta region, the Gulf Coast area, kind of this I-10 and I-20 corridor into parts of the southern mid-Atlantic region. It really does not give testimony to how stormy it will be prior to this over a wide area of the Tennessee and Ohio valleys. Use care and caution, but another inch or two. This is drought relief in this part of the country. Typical moisture for the upper Midwest into the northeast of New England. Little to none over the drought areas of the Plain States region. As that also applies to central California. As the week wears on, late in the week, maybe a half to 1 inch, aggravating the swollen streams and rivers into western Washington and Oregon.
Greg, what's the forecast show for the last week of January?
Temperature-wise, the cold air. We've been talking about this as we got into the middle and late portions of winter, kind of an extended, protracted winter, delayed spring, and we see that cold air that had been firmly ensconced here, now building towards the Sioux and settling to the south and southeast in a fairly persistent basis as jet stream winds come in from west-northwest to east-southeast. The warm down through Texas and California ways likely to stick around, and the storm track becomes a little more active. Again, once again, Washington State, again, that December precip in California, a bit of an anomaly in the La Nina setup. Organized snows for the Canadian Prairie, upper Midwest, northern and eastern Corn Belt, up and down the eastern seaboard. Moisture as well, and back to normal, we think, snow-wise as well for parts of the central Corn Belt and Midwest.
As you look out to that first week of February, Greg, does that lobe of cold air expand?
It does, and really it's present and showing really no signs of relinquishing its hold, kind of an expansion of some of the deeper cold, as you pointed out, through the Canadian Prairie, northern Great Lakes region. The cold will settle farther south into the central plains, all the way to the Ohio Valley. Normal temperatures over the southeast, but this squeeze play here from the warmth over the southwest to the cold to the north and east usually gets a pretty busy and strong jet stream pattern, and no shortage of either fast-moving light to moderate weather systems, so frequent moisture, snows for the northern plains, western parts of the Canadian Prairie, through the Midwest into the eastern states. Moisture here is some good news, but increasing and worsening drought through Texas, southwestern sections of the country, and in through California, too.
Now, what about the week of February 7th up to almost Valentine's Day, Greg?
Yeah, well, nothing terribly sweet about this, or maybe some good snuggling weather. That's maybe another way to look at it here, with the cold air kind of backbuilding a little bit, but it's into play across much of the northern plains, this widespread sub-zero cold, and get used to the cold as we get deeper on here into the winter and early springtime season. The warmth across California, down through the Gulf Coast area, and in through areas of the southeastern parts of the country. Temperatures will vary greatly in that boundaries that sets up across the Ohio Valley. And again, a pretty busy weather pattern ongoing, maybe flooding issues into western Washington State, a worsening drought, central and southern California, the southwest in through Texas. Normal precip here, but the damage is done drought-wise in that part of the country. But look at the expansion, and probably expansion of snow cover as well late in the season. Much of the northern and central Corn Belt locales into the Ohio Valley. Ongoing drought relief over this particular part of the country. And the snowpack and snow cover is heavy already through the Canadian Prairie, with at least normal precipitation anticipated there. It will be a busy and active mid to late winter and spring season across the heartland.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, It's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
We show you a Ford in the tractor shed this weekend. This one was worked pretty hard for a number of years and put away in the shed before restoration in Missouri. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Store Lock Tool Cabinets. You'll have a chance to see them in person at some of those upcoming indoor farm shows, the Midwest Ag Expo at Gifford, Illinois, the Sioux Falls Farm Show, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, or you can see them online, storelock.com. Well, the Mayer family in Missouri had this Ford tractor, and they worked it hard for many years. They bought it new in 1956. Take a look at this tractor. Russell and Rosalie Mayer had this. They called it the Little Ford in their family, and it was finally put up in a barn after it was worked for many years. It was in the barn for about 3 years. Then it was restored at the Four Rivers Career Center in Washington, Missouri, in the night shift program there. Mason Paris, Ryan Nelson, Tori Myers, and Evan Levitt restored that tractor, a 1956 Ford, and it's on display at the American Tractor Museum. The feature tractor this month at that museum in Perryville, Missouri. It's not just equipment that they sell at Big Iron Auctions. Mark Stock is here. Yes, he'll tell us about a sprayer, a fertilizer applicator, and land that is coming up for sale also on Big Iron.
Well, hello, Max. Land has been a very hot topic in the last 6 months, and Big Iron Realty will be selling several different tracts of land in different states on January the 18th. We've got a big land auction for the Henry Hens Trust in Reno County, Kansas. 6 different tracts will sell to the highest bidder. The land is located by Hutchinson, Kansas. Also selling some land owned by Karen Sorensen and Robert Jansen in Gage County, Nebraska. This land is located by Beatrice, Nebraska. And 3 tracts of land will sell for the Schleifert Partnership LLC in Fillmore County, Nebraska. This is high-quality farmland that will sell to the highest bidder on January the 18th. Then, Max, on January the 19th, Coleman Family Farms LLC out of Lacon, Kansas will have 53 items selling on a very large machinery sale. The auction features a 2014 John Deere 7210R mechanical front tractor. There's also a 2005 Kenworth T600 semi-truck tractor also selling on January the 19th. There's a lot of fertilizer application equipment, including a Tyler Titan 3330 self-propelled floater dry spreader selling in Hale, Missouri. There's a Melrose Spray Coupe 3430 self-propelled sprayer selling in Lamar, Colorado. Plus, watch out for our big planter special auction coming up in March. Get your planter equipment listed today. Go to bigiron.com for all the latest information.
We have been getting to know FFAers across the country, and this week we are meeting the president of Nebraska FFA, Ellie Wanick of Aurora, Nebraska. Ellie, what are you excited about in this year ahead?
This year, I'm super duper excited to start our chapter visits with chapters all across Nebraska. We actually recently just broke 11,000 members, and I'm going to be spending my whole next semester visiting chapters all around the state. So I'm super pumped for that.
That is a lot of road miles. Ellie, what are you excited about in working with the chapters? What is it that makes it fun?
I think it's really fun because my officer team and I got to write the workshops that we're actually sitting in the classroom and teaching the students, along with the teachers are learning with their students as well. So we get to spend a whole day with brand new schools, brand new people that we've never met, teaching exactly what we wrote and what we feel is important for our young FFA members to learn. So I think it's going to be super cool to put my thoughts and my hopes for our FFA future into action in the classroom with the students and teachers.
That is fantastic. Building curriculum to shape young minds. Ellie, what was it that got you involved in FFA in the first place?
Right, so I've always been so involved at my school. I went to a pretty small school, so it was kind of expected that you were in everything. And my dad and brother were both in FFA in high school. My dad was the president of his chapter. He was also actually the president of Aurora, and so was I. And then I decided to keep pushing forward as my advisors were encouraging me to run for state office. And eventually I decided that I should just go on an interview, and then if I was going to get the position, I would get to go to UNL, which was one of my dream schools. And on April 10th last year, they announced me as the state president, and then my dreams just came true, and now I'm living out my best life here in Nebraska, teaching all the FFA members.
That's fantastic. At the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, what are you studying?
Currently, I am majoring in animal science with a minor in entrepreneurship. Because of my hopes and dreams someday, I hope to create some kind of product to help research with beef cattle and their reproduction and genetics.
Fantastic. We wish you the best of luck. This was Ellie Wanek, the Nebraska FFA State President.
Now, Samuelson Says. Insight and commentary from Orion Samuelson.
I have lost track of the number of times I've had to say, "Here we go again" on Samuelson Says, but I have to do it again this week. The administration recently proposed a Step 1 Waters of the United States, known as WOTUS, ruled, and despite claims to the opposite from the Environmental Protection Agency and the Army Corps of Engineers, a new WOTUS rule will have a large impact on small businesses and family farms. According to the American Farm Bureau Federation, which recently held a roundtable to discuss the impact of the proposed repeal and replace the Navigable Waters Protection Act, American Farm Bureau President Zippy Duvall said, and I quote, "Farmers are dedicated to protecting the resources they are entrusted with while raising the food our country relies on. We support responsible rules that protect the environment, but we should not need a team of lawyers to interpret those rules just to farm our land." Think of that for a moment, because we thought this was behind us, that we did have the rules, but I guess we don't. So pay attention with your local legislators on the Navigable Waters rule applying to your business. Be safe, be well. My thoughts on Samuelson Says.
Farm women were celebrated at the American Farm Bureau annual meeting. Max had a chance to catch up with two. Stay with us on This Week in Agribusiness.
At the Farm Bureau annual meeting the other day, we were reminded of the important role that women play in that organization. Terry Gilbert from Kentucky was honored with their first ever Founders Award presented to a woman. I asked her how she got started in her involvement with Farm Bureau.
I said yes. They asked in my county Farm Bureau, the county president came to me and said, "Would you serve as our county women's chairman?" And I said yes. "What do I have to do?" He said, "Oh, it's nothing. You don't have to do anything, just show up at the meetings." And it just took off from there. I found it. It's an organization I love. I can stand behind the principles of this organization, and I love that it's an organization that starts meetings with prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance, and it goes right along with our lives.
Terry Gilbert told me that there are times when the Farm Bureau women are handling some of the tasks that perhaps their male counterparts in Farm Bureau would rather not tackle.
I'm the one who will pick up the phone and call a congressman or sit down and fire off an email. My husband is not interested in that, and it's okay because I can do it. And I think that's the case in a lot of family farms, and a lot of times that male figure in the farm is sometimes too busy to do that. So there's definitely a place, and especially in reaching school children, teachers, consumers. Who do you trust more than a farmer's wife who lives it every day and is going to tell you the truth about what's going on?
I asked Terry about those young women who feel they might be a little too busy for involvement in their farm organization. What she would say to them.
I think you have to decide what's a priority for you, and if that's something that you really believe in and want to pursue, then you can do it. And it comes down to a personal choice. And I had some awesome opportunities that just kind of opened the path for me. And like I said yes and stepped through that door. So I was very fortunate that way. But I would encourage anybody who's thinking about it to say yes. Just try it. If it's not for you, you can always hand it off to somebody else. But try it.
When you're busy, I think it's do what you can, because every little bit matters and every little bit counts. So whatever it is that you can do, whatever it is you're gifted to do, whatever it is you're called to do, do it.
It is a fact that many women in the Farm Bureau organization do help in the lobbying effort, calling on their elected officials. Isabella Chisholm says that role dovetails well with another role that many of the women embrace, the ag in the classroom effort.
And I think for some women, that might be a comfort zone. And so the way I try and stretch them in that comfort zone is advocacy on political issues, policy issues within Farm Bureau is something that I'm trying to move them toward. So when I'm moving them toward advocacy, let's use your Ag in the Classroom comfort zone, and let's get a legislator to read the book in the classroom. And that way we're going to put together our policy as well as our Ag in the Classroom.
Isabella, who in her role as the Women's Leadership Chair of Farm Bureau serves on the American Farm Bureau Federation National Board, said women in her organization sure can help with the government policy involvement.
And I do encourage everyone to invite legislators, lawmakers to their farms. If at all possible, if they're at all close, invite them to your farm. They can't anymore but say no and not show up.
Isabella's husband, Kent, was standing nearby there as we visited. I thought I heard him snicker a little bit there as she wrapped up that visit. We'll look forward to seeing you next weekend back here.
Indeed.
All right, and we'll count on seeing you too. We're going to be at the Farm Futures Summit of the week ahead. We look forward to joining farmers and ranchers there. We'll have a report next weekend. So long, everyone. Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Kubota. Shape your world. This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.